Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitman, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Pickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Darius Johnston from Christ Church of Fort Worth. Thank you very much for coming out today, sir. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Thank you, sir. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we just thank you today for your favor upon our county and upon our leadership. Lord, we recognize these are unprecedented times that we recognize the limitations of our human wisdom. So I ask for our leaders today, Lord, that they may lean into your wisdom, that you may grant them incredible understanding, and that your favor may continue to rest upon this community and upon our people. I ask this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus, and for your glory. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have several announcements today on the agenda. First, on the claims register, we have a new addendum that is in your red folder. We just added some additional items to that so that we would approve that today. Also, court members, as we have done in the past, we're going to go ahead and take certain things out of order. We're going to talk about the briefing item first. The first one is going to be the legislative update. I think we're also going to talk about district courts at that particular point. Then we're going to go to the current and emerging health issues, which Mr. Tenasia is going to present. Also, a couple other things. First of all, the PEBC is going to be meeting tomorrow. It's at 2 o'clock. I believe it's, I don't know if that's going to be a web-based meeting, probably so. But it's at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Also, just a note to the court, we have another department head that is leaving us. I don't believe that she is in the audience today, but Julie Parks, who is the Director of Human Services. Her last day is going to be Friday, and at the end of this month, so we're going to miss her very, very much. And we had some really good conversations with the department heads yesterday, and Julie, and she's been a real trooper and been a major asset to Tarrant County, and as I said, we're going to miss her tremendously.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 19th.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We did not have any proclamations today, so I'll take a moment and see if anybody has any announcements they want to make.
I do. Thank you, Judge. First, I wanted to be sure to announce our most recent COVID-19 town hall we will have tomorrow evening from 6 to 7 p.m. Over Facebook Live. And joining us, of course, will be Vinnie Tenasia, as well as Congressman Mark Vesey, who will give us some updates on the actions that the federal government is taking related to COVID. Again, that is tomorrow, January 27th at 6 p.m. And then second, I wanted to just welcome a new member of the Precinct 2 team. Her name is Julie Orbaugh. Julie, if you'll stand up. Julie grew up in Arlington and has lived in Tarrant County for most of her life. She was on the opening team of the Fort Worth Central Market in October of 2001. where she was the youngest manager and had one of the largest departments. She earned her BA in Interdisciplinary Studies from UT Arlington, go Mavs, where she focused on real estate and urban design. She has served as the Community Relations Coordinator in Haltom City for the last 5.5 years, where she was honored to work on issues related to youth in the city, working with Birdville ISD, and on a refresh effort that they had to help with back to school efforts. Julie considers herself a connector because she loves to bring people together and make a difference in people's lives, and her goal is to positively impact the people of Tarrant County. Julie lives in Fort Worth with her fiance Donna, her son Bryce, their cats Ellie and Zoe, and their dog Iggy, and I'm so honored that Julie will be joining the Tarrant County team and the Precinct 2 team as our second Community Outreach Coordinator. Please join me in welcoming Julie.
Welcome, Julie.
That's all I got.
All you got?
All I got.
Anybody else have anything at this time? Okay. I know we'll probably do more about this later, but since we've beaten them like a drum for the last 9 years, Fort Worth has stopped coming down here. But once again, we did beat Fort Worth.
Really?
For that, so I want to thank everybody. You did not praise enough to shave my head, but that's all right. You can look out at into the audience and see folks and imagine what I would have looked like had I had no hair.
It wouldn't have been a good look.
Judge, it's going to take you a long time to get to look like this.
Yeah, I thank the Lord every day for that. Okay, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
You have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, if we could now go to the briefing items, and we'll begin with the legislative update. Mr. Schaffner is here to address the court at this time. I believe that Mr. Schaffner has also provided you with a memorandum yesterday, and I believe it's in your red folders also.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. To begin the briefing, before we slide into the discussion of the memo, wanted to begin with a brief discussion regarding the House and Senate state budgets. On Friday of last week, the House and Senate introduced their baseline budgets. They are remarkably similar. To a great degree, that's been one of the ongoing pieces of the commentary about them is how alike they are. They both do, the baseline budgets both have significant increases above what the biennial revenue estimate, the comptroller's BRE, saying how much money they are expecting the state to come in. They're both about $7 billion. The expenses are about $7 billion above the amount of funds that are going to come in. So we will be watching it very closely. One of the thoughts will likely be because of the federal funds that they received from the CARES Act and how the state used those funds. We will get a better sense of how that money was used whenever the supplemental appropriations bill, which is the bill that's introduced to finish out this biennium, which will end in August of this year. So that supplemental appropriations bill will kind of tell us how the state actually used a lot of that money. And so we'll find that out and see kind of what they are able to carry over. But one item that I wanted to make sure that the court was aware of, because it has a direct impact on Tarrant County, is there is a line item in both budgets, and it was also in the governor's legislative appropriation request, where there is a substantial decrease in the line item is the trusted programs within the office of the governor. And within the trusted programs of the office of the governor, we find a great deal of county grant funds for public safety in criminal justice grants. That has been decreased by over 30%. So, and some of that's because of federal funds that were decreased, that they're anticipating less than what's currently been, but we should be expecting rolling into this biennium, given how severe these cuts are to, again, public safety and criminal justice programs, that within our next budget cycle, we're going to have to be dealing with what happened within, again, public safety and criminal justice decreases in state funding.
What does 30% mean? How much are we talking about in dollars as opposed to percentages?
So within the whole line item, and this is all funds, which would include federal, you're looking at $595 million cut. To the general revenue, that's $160 million. Some of the back of the envelope numbers that some of our associations have been working on this issue, you're looking at probably $155 million in overall cuts to criminal justice and public safety grants.
What types of programs are funded under the governor's criminal justice grant funds?
You have a very wide array, Commissioner, of programs, anything from, we anticipate at this point that everyone from the Criminal District Attorney's Office and some of her programs and staff are court support programs and staff, like specialty court programs, drug court programs, family court programs. Those will see some grant decreases. And then our Sheriff's Office will also, and other related organizations will also see other cuts too.
The Violence Against Women's Act is funded under those programs, is it not?
I believe it is, sir. I haven't looked. I haven't seen the breakdown of what everything is, but from what we're beginning to expect, it's going to take us a week or two to get our hands fully around this issue. But just want to make sure the court was aware of this very significant reduction in state funding.
So from a standpoint of identifying our expenditures as we go into the next budget year, I think it would be very important for us to distinguish between dollars spent this year from grants and dollars spent this year from GR or from our, if it's a GR grant, if it's a grant that goes into our GR, we should be distinguishing that even though this is a GR expenditure, it is a grant-funded expenditure, because if they do pass a legislation that says we cannot reduce our funding for certain things, then we need to be able to show very clearly that we have not reduced our spending, but that the state has reduced their spending.
Right,
That's a good point.
When it comes to grants, the auditor's office already breaks that out, so we'll make sure we continue to track that. I think that there's another issue here, and it needs more clarity as we work through the session. But if the federal dollars come through, that'll be a pass-through type thing. But because a lot of times we get money from that comes through the state, that comes from the federal government, and you really can't hold that money. You have to send that money through.
Kind of like the Corona CARES money that came to the state that never managed to find a way out of the state?
Well, they can't, not necessarily. So, but normally in justice you don't see them. But what you do see, though, is that think of all the fines and the special fees that we continue to collect that are designated for different types of criminal justice programs and other programs also. Those are the ones we need to really pay attention to also, because that may be where the significant cuts are.
It was just expected as we go into the budget that every time we see an expenditure, I'm going to ask the question as to whether or not how much of this, if any, is grant funded.
Sure.
In that distinct, because I know that we have a lot of employees who are grant employees, but we don't usually talk about that when we're looking at the budget. We just look at salaries in a department without knowing how much of those are grant employee salaries.
So we'll make sure that happens.
And as you are speaking with your members of our legislative delegation, this is something that we would encourage you to bring up with them. There are a number of bills out there that have been filed which would restrict the county's ability to raise revenue, any additional revenue if there are cuts to certain or reductions in certain line items related to public safety. Those bills are a work in progress, but again, these are issues that need to be brought in onto the table regarding this particular issue.
I think we also need to focus on this past year as far as how much increase we had in prisoner costs associated with state prisoners in our jail, and that does not need to only be the paper ready. We need to include in there, I believe, the blue warrants, the mental health folks who are being held until a state hospital bed, mental health bed opens up. And just look at that, because that's an increase in our cost, which even if they were to take their prisoners on a timely basis this next year, would appear as though it was a reduction in, if we don't have to add officers from that standpoint.
Understood. And then one other issue regarding the Indigent Defense Commission's budget outlays. We are also expecting a reduction in funds that we'll be receiving from both the formula grant and other programs from the Indigent Defense Commission. So those will also see an increase in the cost to the Tarrant County taxpayer due to that. And part of that is because of a less collection, decrease in revenue from fees associated with those dedicated funds. But just something, again, to be aware of as we're kind of moving forward.
So basically, anytime there's an expenditure out of criminal justice, DA's office, any courts that might eventually be classified as a criminal justice type deal, we need to think of it in terms of, just how could this be impacted by the laws that they're passing?
Sure.
And I think that as we begin our budget for 22, we did this once before when the federal were cutting some of the federal. If somebody cuts a grant and we continue the program for a year, then the next time we're the ones that cut the grant and not the states or the feds. So I think we really have to be aware anytime we're extending something where we've lost grant money, to at least bring to the court the fact that we're doing that, so that we have an opportunity to make a decision in that regard, because I can guarantee you if we wait a year, everybody will point their finger at us and say we're the ones that cut it, not the state or not the feds. And we need to make that very clear.
So we should start seeing some of this after the legislature ends. But mainly we'll be noticing it around August, because the state's grant periods are September 1 through August 30th, 31st, whatever it is, because of their years. And you might remember that as we get into that period of time with the court, we tend to have to come to you and ask you to fund those programs with the belief that we're going to get money to reimburse the county. So, that's where we'll begin to see a lot of this, but we'll see some of it. Not in great clarity. We'll know the dollar amount, but we won't know the clarity as far as how they split it up between the different programs.
So we should examine your interim funding request very closely.
Yes, sir. Yeah. If it's something that comes from the state, yes. And of course we do the same thing with federals, but we have a pretty good indication with federals if the money's going to be available or not.
So moving on from that conversation, regarding the memo that we sent out yesterday to the court, wanted to briefly go through the key findings at the bottom of page 2 of the memo. Working with a number of stakeholders from budget to criminal courts administration and others in our office, we did a deep dive into the data regarding the request for 2 additional criminal district courts. So first off, and this is something that really the district criminal court should be commended for how hard they have worked, and the fact that they have they're operating very efficiently and effectively. The numbers are all there, but one key issue that I did want to point out, FY20 is an anomaly due to the coronavirus pandemic and how the courts have had to function differently due to the pandemic. So if you scratch 20 out and don't include it in your analysis, you do see a little bit of a trend. And that trend would be that there is an increase in cases filed over cases disposed during that time of about 1,800 cases for FY19, excuse me. Another thing that I did want to point out in the OCA's analysis, then that's Office of Court Administration in Austin, in their analysis, they do not distinguish between an elected judge in their FTE need and a magistrate or an associate judge in their FTE need. So the criminal court need, FTE need in Tarrant County is 3.7, and there is no distinguishing between a district court judge and a magistrate within that for who counts as an FTE. So if you did a new court, that would be a reduction to 2.7. If you give a magistrate, that would be a reduction to 2.7. That would be equal to 1. So there's no distinguishing that. The sharp increase in the case backlog that we're seeing, it's up to over 14,000, is due primarily to the pandemic. And on that, I think it's very important to note that with the pandemic-based case backlog, which is over 6,000 cases from the information that we had supplied, that's going to require additional resources from the county in order to handle that case backlog. Even if the court approved a district court, wanted to move forward with 1 or 2 district courts, and then the legislature approved it, the earliest that court could come online would be January 2022. Which, again, that's several months of having that those case backlog that will have to be disposed of. So you're not going to see a lot of impact with pandemic-based backlog on that by an addition of a court. So that's why we were trying to scratch the pandemic and look from 19 to hopefully when we get out of the pandemic to see what that need would look like. So, and then on the third page, we have potential options for consideration. And this just shows the criminal court FTE need that's remaining, potential budgetary impact for FY 2022. And again, these are just some numbers that we'll work with budget to come up with, and then potential budgetary impact for FY 2023. And then we have a range of, I believe, 5 different options. The court, of course, can look at these. These were just meant to stimulate discussion. And with that, are there any questions? Judge Gallagher is here and would be more than happy to answer any questions as well.
Questions, comments?
Well, as we discussed last week or the last time we discussed this, I don't really think that the data supports the need for 2 new criminal district courts. And in as much as the OCA treats criminal court judges and magistrates as if they were interchangeable or somehow equivalent. And magistrates are a heck of a lot cheaper than new courts. I would tend to be in favor of some combination that includes new magistrates and a lesser number of new courts.
And before we go too much deeper into this, Judge Gallagher, would you like to come forward and make any comments based upon?
You let me get way out there on that limb.
I'm sorry, I got you out there on that limb, and then I'll let the rest of us be quiet.
So,
Yeah, right.
sorry about that.
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Judge.
Good morning. It's good to see everybody again.
Good
Thank
morning,
you for
Judge.
giving us time. All I could say is you've seen what the pandemic has done to us. And I just want to tell you that that is going to continue. We are shut down from the Supreme Court has shut us down from any further proceedings until April the 1st. I fully anticipate that that will get extended up until June the 1st and possibly into the summer. So if that's the case, if we had 6,000 cases added to our docket last year, this would add even more this year for us being shut down. So when we were here last time, Commissioner Brooks, you said, you know, that what is the price? You know, this is a heavy price to pay. It is a heavy price to pay, but justice delayed for the victims of a crime has no price. Justice delayed for a defendant who is innocent of a crime has no price. So I know y'all will make a very smart decision, conscientious decision. We always appreciate your work. It is truly a situation where we have the physical facilities to come on board, that we don't have to do any renovations at the courthouse as far as the courts are. The district attorney's office will need space and renovations. But you have seen the work that we've done in the past, reflective-wise, and now we've hit this roadblock, and we see that it's going to take a while to unwind. And if we don't get some help, it's going to take a long time.
Judge, from along the lines of what Commissioner Brooks did say, if we were to go with one court, are there other things? I know right now your magistrates are primarily, I believe, and this may be a wrong statement, and please tell me if it is, but the magistrates right now are primarily assisting with setting bail for folks that are coming in or listening to their initial cases. Are there other things, plea bargains, different things like that that they could be doing, and that could that, so that when we hire a magistrate, we're not hiring a $4 million cost, which is what we get when we get a new court in?
As we talked last time, I think we have 8 criminal magistrates. 4 of them are assigned full-time to the courts, and 4 of them are assigned to the jail. Okay? In that those 4 that are assigned to the jail are doing the magistration when the people first hit the jail, or if they're in Arlington, they're doing it for Arlington over video. That may be expanded to the other cities. We're hoping that does. The 4 then that are assigned to the courts are there to assist the judges in things that can be assigned to them, but understand that magistrates can't do everything that the elected judge can do. Yes, the magistrate can take a plea of guilty. The magistrate can hear probation revocation hearings. The magistrate can set bond. Magistrate can hear motions to suppress, all of that kind of stuff. But anything else involving the actual trials of the case, that has to come from the elected judge. And so that's where we get stuck. The magistrates can pick a jury, but they cannot preside over any of the evidence that occurs in the presence of the jury. That has to come from the judge, and the magistrate cannot receive a verdict from a jury. The judge has to receive it.
How much, the 4 magistrates that you have now working for the courts, how much of all that other stuff are they currently doing?
It depends on the judge of the court. Some courts refer more work to the magistrates, and some judges do things more hands-on and tend just to do it themselves.
But if we were to give you more magistrates for the courts as opposed to another court, I mean, I think we're talking about requesting 1.
Okay.
But I think that as far as 2 at this point in time, it's not seeming to be as likely. Would that help if we could give you some additional magistrates to assist the judges in doing some of those other things?
Judge, we'll take whatever we can get. Okay. And again, I go back to y'all have always been there to support us, and we very much appreciate it. Understand that also wanted to clarify, those 4 magistrates work for all 20 of the criminal courts. They work for the 10 district judges and they work for the 10 county criminal judges. So potentially do the math, that's 1 judge for every 5 courts.
How are they assigned work to do?
Mr. Schugert has more to do with that. It usually involves the individual court coordinators checking with county court administration to see what magistrates are available. Say for example, I've got some motion to suppress where the defense is saying evidence was illegally obtained, and either I'm having to do something else or in a trial in the real world, then my coordinator would contact the criminal courts administration to find out which magistrate would be available to hear it, and it would be coordinated with the district attorney's office and the defense bar as far as when the hearing could take place.
And just for the court's information, when it comes to magistrates, we do not need any type of legislative action to put another magistrate over there. That's simply a budgetary issue that we could consider at the beginning of the fiscal year.
The reason why we're asking for 2 this time is because the district courts have to come from the legislatures. So if we get 1, then we're looking at potentially 2 to 3 years before we could come back again and get the second one. That's why we're asking for them to be created during different budget cycles so that the cost could be spread out over 2 budget cycles to the county and not have to wait for the next legislative session.
Is there any way we could say that we want the courts established over the next 2 bienniums, or I feel certain right now that I think one is an agreeable top. I don't even know that. Maybe we ought to give everybody else a chance to get out on that limb with Commissioner Brooks before we saw it off.
Well, I'm out there with them. I think I made that clear a few weeks ago. So.
My response is I'm not sure if that could be done. I'm not sure if this legislature would bind the next legislature for a fiscal item in the next legislature.
I'd be real surprised if that could happen.
Yeah. That's not a normal thing. Okay. Other questions or comments?
I certainly can support 1 and additional magistrate if that will provide some relief and help, if they can be put in a position to do that. I wish we could do 2, but it doesn't, just not sure we can get there. And it's not really next year, it's the next year and the next year. But, so.
I anticipate that we would be coming back at some point in the future. We'll take what we can get now.
I'm sure.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before he?
I would be inclined to support 1 new court and 2 new magistrates.
If that's a motion, then I second.
That's a motion.
So the magistrate issue doesn't need to be decided until we get to the budget piece.
So let's just do why don't we just do the?
But it's expressing the will of this court.
Absolutely.
Okay. So 1 court, 2 magistrates currently right now is what you're saying.
That's what I'm hearing the will of the court to be. A note on process. Since this is a briefing item, we don't need a court vote today. What we'll do is, if that's the will of the court, 1 additional criminal district court, we'll drop a resolution. It'll be under the administrator section next Tuesday for approval. But we wanted to make sure and have this open, transparent discussion on where the court is on this particular issue. So we will Unless I hear any objection, we will put a resolution on the court asking for the legislature to create an additional criminal district court next Tuesday.
Thank you, Russell.
Excuse me. In the event that y'all do that, the two magistrates, I would ask that if we come out of this situation early before the next budget cycle to where we could get the magistrates on board to start helping us immediately, that the court would consider doing that once we find out where we stand.
Yeah, and
Okay. All right. Thank
the
you.
magistrates we're talking about are the ones that assist the judges, not the ones that do arraignments and bond setting.
That's correct,
Yeah.
Commissioner. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so we're not gonna worry about the motion in a second right now. We'll bring that up.
Right, we'll put a policy statement together like we've historically done, and it'll be on the agenda for next week.
Withdrawn.
So, members of the court, if we can continue on the briefing agenda, we can go to item 10A, which is the current emerging health issues. Mr. Tenasia is here to address the court at this time. Your Honor, I do want to, and I believe you know this, that we do have some participation on this. Okay.
Well, good morning, Your Honor, and members of the court.
Danny, good morning.
Just wanted to get your situational awareness on the COVID-19. So today will be the day we cross 100 million cases worldwide. So that's a major milestone. Tarrant County is currently at about 209,000 cases, almost 210,000. That's about 10% of Tarrant County that has been impacted since the start of this pandemic. And 2,101 deaths. I think we're adding 29 new deaths today. Today is going to be our first reported death of an under 10-year-old. Due to privacy concerns, I can't go into much further detail, but that is a rarity. But it is very sad, heartbreaking that we've lost a child to COVID-19. I think the only other death we reported was between 10 and 20 years, so that was I think a teenager that died a few weeks ago. So again, 1,500 new cases being reported today, but that's where I drew the line. If you see that little pun intended, the news does get better from here. It's relative. I mean, it's not something that we're celebrating, but it does get better from here. Our hospitalizations, yes, sir?
Case numbers do seem to be
They are declining. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the death rate is still
Yes.
astronomically
So
high.
death data is going to continue to climb for a few weeks probably because it takes
It's
a while.
following indicator.
Yes, it's a lagging indicator because people get sick, they struggle in hospitals, some end up not surviving. So it's going to be for a while until we see that's climb, but the case counts may continue to decline. It was opposite. Cases were declining, and the cases were climbing and deaths were declining. So you remember that conversation. Well, deaths are going lower. Well, because it's a lagging indicator. It was from when we had the low in September. So anyhow, so the relatively good news is that the hospitalizations are starting to decline. Our Tarrant County hospitals currently have 1,295 people positive with COVID, and actually a significant drop from just a week ago. We were in 1,400 and some change. So that's good news. 27.67% of capacity currently consumed by COVID. So if you take it in perspective, it's still pretty, harsh numbers, but we're heading in the right direction. And it's not just a one blip. It's actually over the last couple of weeks, we're starting to see improvement. 245 people in the ICU, same thing. We've lowered that count. We were as high as, I think, 60%, and now we're down to 48% of ICU capacity used up by COVID. 35 ICU beds are available, which is great. We've come down as low as 6 and less, and we've gone back up, so that's great news. TSAE, similar improvement. I think they were close to almost 4,000 people in the hospital just a couple of weeks ago, and now we have 3,569 in the 19-county region. So it's an improvement, 21.8%. And as you know, we watched the numbers tick up above 15%, and there was a trigger with the GA32. Similarly, as we see the numbers go below 15%, I believe it works in the same order. You got to wait about a week, and then the restrictions start to come off. So that's an interesting thing to watch on how this is all going to unfold, hopefully quickly. 88 ICU beds available in the 19-county region. And then, these are some of the trend charts. As you can see, the cases peaked a couple of weeks ago. Last week was our first week. That's a little bit lower. Now, it still fills in a little bit as the data comes in because it keeps coming in over a couple of weeks. But it looks like we're heading in the right direction. I base that on the spread of the virus. We occasionally talk about the reproduction rate of the virus, or the R naught. Recently, 2 weeks ago, I think I mentioned we were at 1.22, which is very high. That means one person infected is infecting 1.22 other folks. And that's how the virus spreads very rapidly. Below 1 is good news, and we've drastically dropped from 1.09 just about 2-3 days ago to 0.82. That means we're really slowing down on the spread of the virus. And we'll continue to watch this because, there's multiple factors impacting it. And then our doubling rate is slowly starting to increase, which is good. That way, we're slowing down again. But on the right chart, like Commissioner Brooks said, the death data is certainly peaking right now, and we expect it to continue to climb for a little bit, and it will eventually follow the case counts. Here's the rest of the good news. All our indicators are in the right direction. That's when I get excited. I don't take one indicator and say, okay, this one's heading in the right direction, so we're going to talk about that. I look at confirmation. Everything must go in the same direction before I feel that we're in a downtrend. That's just having learned over 20 years of public health. If everything's telling you something, that's where we're going. And so as you can see, all of the indicators are positivity rate, even though it's still high, it's at about 23%. It's going down. From 30%, we've come down to 23%, so we're heading in the right direction. Our COVID-like illness peaked at 15%. I think we're down to around 11%. We talked about the hospital capacity in the region and in our area. And then the big thing was the case rate. We peaked at 912 cases per 100,000. We're down to 641 per 100,000. Now, make no mistake, this is still 6 times higher. We're deep into the red zone per the White House report. But it's heading in the right direction. And given all the data in the background, we're making good progress over the last couple of weeks. I think the peak that I've identified was around January 8th on our charts. And it's usually retrospective. You can't tell when you're at the peak. You have to let time kind of go by, the trend establish, and then say, okay, that was the peak in the past. So that's all good news. We're heading in the right direction. So what can we do? So the timing is not coincidental. It's not a fluke that this is happening. Mid-December, the vaccine came out. Our hospital started giving it. Right before Christmas, Public Health and its partners received vaccine, and we started giving it. Now, we've talked about it. It's a highly effective vaccine, 95% effective with 2 doses. And I'll show you some data. 5% of our county has received vaccine. So combined with other efforts, vaccine is starting to show its effect. It's not something that just happened by chance. There's efforts underway, and it's starting to have its effect. So what can we do? Get vaccinated when your time is there and you're eligible. Don't miss that opportunity because it's a highly effective mitigation tool. You're already starting to see that in the data. Continue to wear a mask. There is trouble on the horizon. There's a lot of talk about these additional strains that have come up. Dr. Fauci got quoted saying people who are using just a regular cloth mask may want to think about doubling that mask up to create more layers. Because if all the strains that we are using our vaccine against start to go down, the other strain that the vaccine may be less effective against might start to predominate, right? So it's kind of natural selection. It happens that way. So to continue to push that down, we need to make sure it doesn't spread. And the best way to do that is wear a mask. Surgical masks, they are okay. N95 that you're wearing, that's okay. But the cloth masks sometimes are not the most effective, especially when people don't wear them right. Yes, sir. You got to wear it. And so
it's double. It's
yes,
double.
Double layer is good. And I think
at least double layer.
There was a lot of coverage about what kind of masks should work. For a cloth mask, because they're not as tightly woven as a surgical mask, you got to create more layers. And there's so many different designs out there. There's filters in there that are cloth-based or charcoal-based. So just find the right mask. If you just have a simple one, a plain cloth mask, put a double one on so we can reduce the spread. Stay 6 feet away from others. Avoid large gatherings. That is still true because when you bring a lot of people together, we still are at a pretty high rate in our community. You're going to have somebody that, without knowing, they might be spreading the virus. and then continue to wash your hands throughout the day.
So then
Before you,
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
before you move on to the vaccination efforts, I want to make sure I heard you right. You said 5% of our county has been vaccinated?
Yes, ma'am. I'll show you that, and that's with at least one dose. The series is not complete on the 5%, but that's some effect already starting to show.
Okay.
And I'll get to those numbers here in a minute.
All right.
Yes, sir.
One
So-
second. I got another question.
Oh, sorry.
So this time last week, you had shared that I guess that second strain had not, you assumed that it was here in Tarrant, but we hadn't seen evidence of it yet. Have we seen evidence of that?
Not yet. I was on a call with the CDC yesterday. They have identified only 195 cases across the U.S., but the general assumption is that it's probably more widespread than what we see. They're not too worried about the UK strain, which is being found here. They're saying that vaccine is effective. You know, Moderna and Pfizer are making their studies and seems to be generally working against it. The big concern is about the South African strain. That's where it seems to be that the vaccine efficacy is lower. And so there was news yesterday that Moderna is actually already working on a booster dose that covers that strain as well. So we'll see. But it tells you the technology and how fast it can be leveraged. For the flu season, for example, when you have a mismatch, a new strain emerges, you got to wait for the next season. You know, you got to take that strain, isolate it, grow it in chicken eggs. That's how they make the flu vaccine. And then you put it in the next year's flu vaccine, and then next year it may not be a match again. But this is a lab-generated tool. You just take the fingerprint of the RNA, and you create new vaccine. So it's amazing technology. People who understand it, they're just giddy about it. So it'll have a lot of benefits and fast timeline on where they can bring the booster.
Okay, very good. I'm good now. Thank you, GK.
And before you go on, and I have some just kind of general questions, but one, and looking at all the statistics and stuff that come out, I've had 2 or 3 questions about, well, what do we think about the fact that Tarrant County has supposedly surpassed Dallas County in the number of deaths? And I've gone back and looked at state data, and everything I see indicates, except Dallas's website, indicates that we are about 500, a little over 500 deaths behind Dallas and not in front of. Our data is up to date, correct?
Yes, it is up to date. I know that we mentioned to you that we're combining the DSHS mortality data, and because the volume was so high, we haven't been able to keep up with it every day, so we do a weekly merge. So sometimes you note on Fridays there's a little bit heavier number that we report out because we're completing that work by the week, end of the week. Yes, sir.
So the only thing that could account, because Dallas is showing about 600 deaths less than what the state. So maybe they haven't reconciled, and
I haven't been able to check with them. It's possible. I know we've been trying to keep up with our data. Others may not be because the volume was just too high.
but we are matching. Yes. We are almost exactly. In fact, on a given the maybe 1 day difference.
Yes, sir.
We're exactly at what the state is saying.
Yes, that was an issue for a while when the data wasn't coming, and we kept asking. So that has been rectified. That is correct. Yes, sir.
Then another question that I guess, I know we today approved an extension on our contact tracing. I guess you don't ever talk too much about that, and we're spending a whole lot of money. What are we doing?
Yes.
What good is being accomplished right now with as widespread of the diseases as we're talking about, almost 10%? What are we doing with the contact tracing information?
It's an effective tool, so it has its place. It just can't handle the floodgates when they're open. When we start to push the numbers down, it's going to be actually helping even more to drive the numbers further down, because we make an actual effort talking to the person who's ill, talking to their contacts, giving them all the information on how to protect their family, how to protect coworkers, when can they go back, when is it appropriate to test. Because generally people think they know, but it gets very confusing and complicated. So that effort really helps. It's a proven tool. It has its place. It's not designed to be the only strategy and it can control everything, because it's a control tool. When large volume of cases are occurring, you need community level mitigation. So that's where we had the little rub. If the policy is not there to support all of that, the one tool alone can't fix it all.
Well, if that's the case, then why don't we suspend it when the floodgates are open and renew it when we get to the point and use those people someplace else.
Yeah.
Because I don't see that we're getting anything for all the money we're spending.
So we can evaluate that, but we also kind of prioritize within. You know, when the case volume's too high, we focus in on where we can have the most impact. So like with nursing homes, schools, or like with household members, generally large contacts at large, like, you know, I went to a party and there was 100 people. We send out automated messaging asking them to fill out the form. If they don't respond, we send out a closeout letter. So we do prioritize some of that. There's some CDC guidance, I don't exactly recall, but they were talking about even when you get notified about a case, the most impact is going to be when you identify their contacts within the first 6 days. So depending on your volume, if you have capacity, go all the way out to the 14 days. If you don't have capacity, lower it down to 6 days. So a lot of that work is done in the background by the team.
I need to see some statistics.
Sure.
Because, I mean, if that's the case, I'd like to know how many people we are, from a positive case, how many people are we contacting and within that 6 days?
Yes, sir.
Are we still doing, who's doing the texting? Because I know we had a company that was sending out texts and
Yes.
stuff like that. Are we still doing that?
Yes, sir, we are.
Didn't we authorize hiring like 180 individuals just for contact tracing?
Yes, sir. Well, it's the entire gamut of epidemiology. So that's intake people, school outbreak investigation folks, nursing home outbreak investigation folks, and just the regular contact tracers who work with individual cases. But there's so much, there's a variety of things. It's not a, contact tracing sort of a catch-all term. There's a lot of specialized work in the back, and different teams are working on that.
I would just like to have something that, I mean, you talk about a lot of the things that we're doing and the things that are producing certain things and how effective they are. I just don't ever get any kind of feedback on the contact tracing that says
we can bring that back.
We're
Yes,
getting anything.
No problem. We'll get you an update on that as well. Not an issue.
If there's some way you could allocate any of that personnel. I mean, we've talked, for 2 weeks about drive-through vaccinations, and there's some very successful, appears to be some very successful ones taking place in our area. Not necessarily Tarrant County, but Denton County.
Yes, sir. We can evaluate all of that, not a problem, and look at what possible
Because they could start doing
yes,
the data part of it.
Oh, we're already using them for some of that. Yes, sir.
And I know we're fixing to get the vaccines,
Yes.
and so I'm anxious to hear about what UNT is doing. And I really hope, I don't think we're going to get a presentation from them today.
Not today.
But I would like a weekly presentation because of, well, let's get to the vaccines and then I'll see what, you may answer some of my
Mr.
questions
Maney,
in
if you
that.
have a question.
Unless court members have another question.
No.
So it deals with this slide. So we're now at a point where you're starting to give the second dose. And our office is getting calls, I imagine the court members are getting calls also. People are asking, if I get the second dose, do I still need to wear a mask? Do I still need to stay 6 feet apart? That's a big question out there. So how do you answer that?
So current guidance is yes, because till a ample amount, over 70% is the target, till that many people are immunized and we know that the vaccine is effective and the cases are going down, all of these measures have to be in concert. You get vaccinated, you wear a mask, you stay 6 feet away. Schools are asking questions, and so are many other departments. I've got my people vaccinated, now can they stop wearing a mask? Or if they have an exposure, do they still need to quarantine? Current guidance is yes. We still have to do all of those things because too many people are out there that are unprotected, and we're too new to this vaccination to see how well it works. It's efficacious, but can I still transmit the virus? We don't know, right? So those are some of the unanswered questions that over time studies will tell us, and that's where the contact tracing effort is very important. If we totally give up on that, we will not know that we had people who were positive or their contacts who were vaccinated got positive and started spreading the virus. So that's where all of this data is collected. So it's all an interconnected mechanism. Every side has its value on what they do. Again, talking about strains, our lab is involved, state labs are involved in doing strain surveillance. So it's just a lot of different moving parts. It all kind of gets put together at the national level, and then we get guidance.
So, Benny, The two-shot protocol is supposed to give 95% immunity. How long after the second shot is that immunity complete?
About 2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks?
Yes, sir. It takes your body to respond, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Now, on the second dose, people are already telling us that they're feeling it. That means your body's already primed. So, generally the immunity kicks in faster. But the general rule of thumb is that we give a vaccine, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for your body to fully build the immunity that it's going to have against that vaccine. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Mr. Manning?
I saw that look, Vinny.
Okay. Well, no, these are good questions. Okay. So vaccination efforts, of course, it's all good news. The interest remains high in our community. And from a public health standpoint, we're loving this because our big worry is that the interest may fade. We want people to be interested. We want people to take the vaccine. That is the sure shot way to get out of the pandemic and get back to normal. So 417,000 people have registered, and this was last night. I'm sure there's more this morning. 340,000 are currently eligible. That's about 82%. So what about the rest of the 18%? Well, most of them are future eligibles. So they're not like completely ineligible. We just don't have those phases open, and that's fine. But as you know, the volume of vaccine supply has been pretty low and somewhat inconsistent. So we urge patience because people are getting impatient. Hey, I signed up 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Where's my vaccine? Yes, we're working on it. It's just we're dependent on supply coming in from the state and the manufacturers. Really, that's where it's direct ship from the manufacturers.
So would you talk to us a little bit about vaccine supply, the current state of vaccine supply?
Yes. So currently we're designated as a hub location, one of the two, I believe, in Tarrant County, and then I think there's more being added. We're getting about 9,000 a week. 2 weeks in a row we've received that. And as you can see, if that's the rate, we're going to be for months trying to address this. But the understanding is that the vaccine supply is going to improve over the next few weeks. So that's the current status. We ran out sort of midweek last week. So I believe Thursday last week we received more doses, but in the morning half we did not have clinic at 2 of our 3 locations. And in the afternoon we reopened when the vaccine arrived. And then Saturday was, I think we had another full day on Saturday. So we broke into the next week's allocation sooner. So this week again, we were expecting to run out midweek, but we've got notification that we've got a lot more second doses coming, which is good. Yesterday I was telling the judge I was a little nervous. Our people due for second doses were 5,200. We had 4,200 second doses on hand, so I was a little nervous about it, but it is coming in as they promised.
Yeah, and we're supposed to get 23,000 first shots this week, in addition to whatever those second shots are. But the like you're saying, the 23,000, you began using this week's allocation last week because you ran out.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's that's something that that everybody is struggling with at this point in time. But we're 23,000 were the first shot doses that we're supposed to get this week.
Were those Moderna or
Yes,
Pfizer?
primarily we've had Moderna. We've had just one batch of Pfizer. I think it was 3 trays, which is 2,925 doses. Good news is we're getting more out of the Pfizer to the point where they're officially relabeling. So that's been in the news that instead of calling it 5 doses per vial, they're now putting the label there's 6 doses per vial. So we got a lot more out of the 2,925. I think we got like 3,300 or so doses. So
what's our holding capacity
of
Pfizer because of its refrigerated?
I knew I had those numbers, but at least a couple 100,000 doses or more. We have plenty of capacity. That's not the issue. I mean, all put together, I think we can hold probably 400,000 plus doses, and even more if we really squeeze into our freezers. We can do that. Yes, sir.
So we're going to, we got the 9,000 for this week. Are we getting an additional 23,000 for this week?
I don't know. That might be the entire county's allocation for.
If you go to DHS They have a weekly allocation.
I'm just trying to figure out what the 23,000.
The 23,000 is what they're showing for us for the week 7 allocation. And it tells you how much and where it's going. So for example, under the allocation for week 7, Tarrant County, the Arlington Fire Department is supposed to get 7,000 Moderna. Tarrant County Public Health is supposed to get 9,000 Moderna.
We got those, yes, sir.
Texas Health is supposed to get 9,750 Pfizer. And then, let me see here, 100 is going to the Arlington Community Health Center, Moderna. 100 is going to Keystone Hospice. 100 is going to St. Camillus Medical Center. And so that makes up the...
So the 23,000 is county-wide, not just...
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay.
And every week is shown on that DHS allocation chart.
And another thing that has happened, we've heard just bits and pieces on different conference calls, not anything official, but apparently the federal program for long-term care facilities seems to be wrapping up early, which is not all good news. Seemingly there was a lot of people who either declined to take the vaccine or there was an outbreak, so they were just not currently eligible because there's an outbreak in a nursing home facility. But there's some concern that there was vaccine being put aside for this purpose. So at least what I've heard on a few conference calls is it's being released back. So the state of Texas may have an additional few 100,000, maybe a couple 100,000 doses of Pfizer to give out, which we are eligible to receive Pfizer as well. So maybe that will help with the supply, but in the big picture of things, it's just shifting of resources, not really helping where it needed to go. But we'll take it and run for now and then continue to address all those other needs as the situation evolves. So we're expecting the supply to increase. And then there's also other good news. AstraZeneca, of course, I think is approved somewhere overseas. I forget which country. I believe in the UK they had submitted their data. I'd have to go look. But I've heard sort of just some media updates about AstraZeneca potentially wanting to submit in mid to late February for FDA approval. And there's been coverage about late March, probably they're going to have a lot of vaccine. And so that's one option. And then Johnson & Johnson, of course, is, I think they're submitting some of their data elsewhere, not in the US right now. That's a single dose vaccine. So hopefully by March we'll have 2 more candidates, and that will help improve the supply. And some of the logistical challenges about 2 doses are going to remain, but Johnson & Johnson, if we get those, that's a single dose. So it's going to improve, and it's going to improve fast. So we just need to be patient. It will be here. So some other good things that are happening. As you know, the DSHS dashboard has its delays and lags, but on the back end, they are starting to give us pretty regular data on a weekly basis, which is great news. And we have been working on a draft dashboard. I have some preview for you to see today, but we're sort of just finalizing and going through internal review process that everything's good. So that dashboard, and I'll show you all the numbers. It's ready. And we will update it on a weekly basis because there's no point of just sharing our information, what public health does, because we're just one of the providers. The best is to do the weekly update of all the providers in Tarrant County so you have the most complete picture of what's happening in the county. Another thing that we launched was the status check and cancellation feature you asked, Judge, last week or 2 weeks ago. So the feature itself is working well. If there's a button on the website, for status check, if you have your registration ID, which when you asked, we already started sending that out in an email. Every person who registers gets it. And you put in the registration ID and a date of birth, it actually emails you after verifying. So it's not something that is displayed on screen. You get an email back, just like for security purposes, banks do that and many others do that. And then the cancellation feature is also there. You can ask to get canceled. Currently, we are having some struggle automating that, so it's a manual thing. It sits in our data queue. We cancel the appointment, and then it generates the email. The issue that we had last night, we knew that there were about a couple 100,000 people that don't have their registration IDs. Now, a lot of them already have had their appointments, but that's okay. So we tested it. auto-generated email works fine, but as we let it loose, the system glitched because it was just going too fast, and people got this automated email with just a random number, 1579, the dear 1579, and everything was 1579. So a lot of social media, questions. What is this email? Is my data safe? Yes, your data is safe. That was us having a problem. There was a glitch. So we have a ticket open with our database vendor. We found out that if you let it just run, trying to do all of them, it causes problems. But if you batch it out, let's do 5,000, 10,000 at a time, works fine. We have had 15,000 people this morning when I came in already check their status online. It was not needed because the email that went out correctly, those folks actually had their status in the email, but people want to try out the new feature, that is fine. So the feature is working okay, it's just that we had the glitch in an email, and we're working to get that resolved so everybody can have their registration number and then know how to use it, what's the purpose and so forth. So that part's working, and then we're making progress towards automating the cancellation feature. In theory, once you ask for the cancellation, it auto-triggers that cancellation email and it records in the system. Right now, there is a manual step in there, but it's working. So those are the two major updates. And I think I might have mentioned last week, I forget, but we do have those video loops playing at least in the Hearst Northeast site. And we've given the video loops to Arlington. I haven't had a chance to check if they've been able to play at their locations. Currently at Resource, we don't have video monitors because its lines are outside, so we don't have video monitors available there. So we're looking at other options. It's just too many things to consider at this point. So we're just kind of taking it one step at a time. But we will get there about getting people messages in multiple languages. And the idea is that as you're standing in line, you're getting a little bit of FAQs. How efficacious is the vaccine? Are there side effects? How is the vaccine made? Does it work, not work? All of those FAQs are answered in all three languages, English, Spanish, and Vietnamese.
So Benny, to that point, I know that, I guess last week, the Spanish language sign-up site was launched. When do we anticipate the Vietnamese language sign-up?
Yeah, so the Vietnamese translation is complete. We had an issue with the rendering because it's not a regular HTML type website. It's a database, and it doesn't have the font that renders correctly. So there is an add-on application that actually does that. So currently we're working with our team to see how we can get that added. It is going to be an agreement and a little monthly recurring cost. We're just working through all of that because every time there's an agreement, there's always issues in there that as a government entity, we can't always just sign the dotted line. Sure. So we're working through that process. There are a couple of different add-on options, so we're evaluating those to make sure everything's going to work the way we expect them. So hopefully soon. I just don't have a clear timeline, but we are understanding that that's a barrier. But good news is about 8% of the Asian population has signed up. I'm sure there's Vietnamese folks in there as well. So we'll continue to work on it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
What's the status on the UNT interlocal?
So we are currently working with them. We're trying to finalize the scope of work.
I know we've talked a lot about the scarcity of vaccines right now. Today I heard that the administration, now whether they can do it or not, who knows, but they've now upped their goal to 1.5 million per day, which works out to be about 45 million per month. And if you look at our percentage as of that means that Texas is going to get about 4 million. And then if you look at our percentage as a percentage of the other counties, that means that we could be getting about 290,000 per month, which works out on a 5-day week to be about 15,000 per day. And if we go to 7-day weeks, then we're looking about 10. Right now, we are, with the sites that we currently have open, we're at about the capability of being able to do about 7,500 a day. So I hope that within this agreement that we are very specific about the fact that we would, if we get to the 290 and we're working if we get to that in 5 weeks, then we're going to be doing close to 29,000 per day.
And I think the total math needs to account for all the other partners that we don't know about, like the
Well, and I
hospital
agree.
system. Yes, sir.
But what I'm saying is that right now, the state has stopped giving a whole lot to the pharmacies.
That
And
is
so
correct.
part of what our deal with UNT should include is not only all the sites that we could eventually stand up to get to 29,000 per day, but also the staff, training the staff, and then getting some sort of agreements with the pharmacies, whether it be the Tom Thumbs, the Krogers, the CVS's, whomever, because I still agree with Mr. Manius, those people know what they're doing. They do the flu shots every year.
Absolutely.
So we really ought to incorporate them into the deal. But we've been sitting here saying, okay, it's the scarcity of the vaccine that's holding us back. In 5 to 6 weeks, I don't want it to be turned around, and the reason it's held back is because we're not ready. And right now, we could be, if they'd pick it up with just the doubling of the second shot, we probably should be at around 14,005 a day, or getting pretty close to that. And I think we've got that capability if we pushed our current ones. But last week I went up and looked at the Louisville site for the drive-through, and it's a drive-through. They move around. It's not going to be at the Baptist Church in Louisville this week. It's going to be 2 other places. And I really want the next site that we stand up to be a drive-through site.
Yes, we are already, there's staff members that have gone out, looked at various drive-through options. I think there were efforts even yesterday to check out different locations. So the work is underway. We'll come back with a recommendation after we talk to Mr. Manius on where the best
That's
site
fine.
would be.
I just don't want to come back next week and we set up another site and it wasn't a drive-through site.
Understood. Yes, sir.
Mr. Manius, the UNT agreement, will it be ready for us next week?
We're going to try to get it to next week.
Let's try real hard to get
We're working
that.
on it every day.
And I hope that they're continuing to, I thought gave them permission to go ahead.
Yeah, they're working.
And I really hope that.
The material and things we're working on, UNT is working right now on this, where no one's sitting still on it. We're just trying to formulate that document. The court made some statements last week about going ahead and engaging and them being compensated for that, and we're all working on that basis.
And I would like for them to be here on a weekly basis. And I'd like for part of that report to be how many sites have they identified, how many people have they either begun the training of or are they training, how they're going to make each one of these to be able to do that, and what they feel like are the capabilities on a number of vaccines per day, per week, whatever, that we can put out.
So what are we hearing from FEMA then? Because it's my understanding that FEMA was going to bring 500 people to help us.
No, they never said that. They said last Friday that I think the conversations that they've said is, we think we can send you 100 now, which will basically be one location, whether, it's one drive-through location. Now, eventually they may bring others, but the conversation that I had, and I know we followed up that afternoon
Yes.
last week, I think he said that he could, that they were looking at maybe 108 people.
Well, actually, it's even less because they don't have the medical contingent, so they're asking us. We visited with them on Saturday, so they're pretty much saying we can bring you general staffing if you can bring the medical contingent.
And
so that
that's
takes
why,
out a few.
again, I
Yes,
think
sir.
it's extremely critical that we make it a drive-through so we can move it around based upon what perceived need is on any given week. Like last week, we talked about areas.
Absolutely. We can operationalize all of this offline. No worries, sir.
Well, offline's not what I'm wanting.
I know.
Offline often means that we come in here and you've done it.
I know. I just want to present what we've agreed upon, and we can move forward, and we can have the conversations. I don't think we need to keep everybody here. That's all. So
we fully understand the issue of the drive-through. Okay, we understand it, and so we're going to go ahead and move forward on that. We do like the mobility aspect of it because that means we don't have to have a permanent site. But there is no argument as far as a drive-through versus a facility, because by the time we get finished with all this, we're going to have both. And it's now just a matter of the personnel issue. I would request, though, that if we are having conversations and we talk about manpower, because I distinctly remember hearing the 500 number.
That was the star request. Yes,
That's
sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
That we make sure that we share that information for the planning purpose.
Well, I thought we talked about that last Friday, and I thought you were on that phone call. Because
I was under the understanding that call, that was their initial aspect, but that our star was 500.
Well, the star was 500, but what Tony and them indicated is that at this point in time, and what you're saying now is in a conversation you had on Saturday or Sunday, they indicated that it was going to be less than the 100 that they had talked about on the call Friday afternoon.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay, so that's fine. As long as we know what the deal is, we can.
Yes.
But just weekly, I want UNT to be here on a weekly basis to talk about the progress they're making on sites, on staffing, training, and whatever else they feel like we need to know at that point.
Marketing and outreach.
Yes, that's also very important.
Correct. Okay, so just to sort of show you what, as a preview, and again, this is in draft form, so don't get married to this concept. You know, it may change by the time we publish the dashboard. But in the draft form, it does look like this, and it's very current information. A total number of doses administered when we got the data, I think over the weekend, was 104,540. Now, yesterday we, at least through public health and our partners, we gave like 5,000 more. But across the county, I'm sure there was more doses given. But 104,000 is a good number to start. It was good till the end of this weekend. 98,849, that's 95% were Tarrant County residents. So that's good news. There's some coverage out this morning. I think there's some misunderstanding. Registrations are high from, so almost 20% plus registrations are from out of county. But currently so far, the doses that are being given are Tarrant County residents. And the reason is registrations are happening with us as a public entity. Doses are being given by everybody, not just public providers. So there's private providers, hospitals, pharmacies. So a lot of the doses are going to Tarrant County residents. I just want to clarify that because it was sort of misconstrued that 20% or more doses are going to out of county. That is currently not the case. And then 5% of the residents who received it are out of county. And that's just not that they just signed up and came. Several of them may have worked in Tarrant County. Because that's another reason why in the beginning we were allowing that, and then later we opened it up. Anybody who lives anywhere can sign up, not a problem. Most people are going to drive a reasonable distance to get here. The number administered by Tarrant County is there. I can tell you the numbers are like 43,000 right now, and so we've added a few more thousand. Doses administered by others were 64,000 and some change. Now here's the real information. 95,000 or so have had at least one dose. That's 5% of the county already. And as you can see, we're making good progress. I mean, we've been only doing this about 4 weeks, and that's also with several hiccups, a few doses here, then nothing, and then a few doses here. So it's been going pretty well. And then almost 9,000 people in the county have completed their series, which means that we're making good progress on that, and they've received their second doses as well. And they're just coming due.
Vinny, for example, I've had several people call and say, well, I couldn't get our information from us, and I went over to Parker County and got it. So at the same time as we've done vaccinations of people outside of Tarrant, the surrounding counties have also done vaccinations for folks from Tarrant County.
That is correct.
We don't have any way of knowing.
Well, it will show up in this data. So it's by county of residents on who is vaccinated.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So the 98,000 or so will include people that got it outside of the county as well. Yes, sir.
And one other thing that has been a point that a lot of people have called about, and we were talking about this yesterday. A lot of people are calling our office saying, well, I originally got my vaccine at blah, and I've gone back to get my second shot, and they tell me they're no longer giving vaccines. And so the question was, well, what do I do now? Do we register? I did communicate with Chief Kidd, the head of the Texas Department of Emergency Management, and he was adamant about the fact that when they send the first shot out, if it was a Moderna, they follow out 4 weeks later with the second shot, and that goes to them, not included in those numbers that I read earlier, but those are outside and separate from those numbers. And those people, the place that gave that block, that pharmacy is supposed to take care of communicating with and giving the second shot.
Absolutely.
So if anybody out there goes to that original site and they're told that they're no longer doing it or they don't have that vaccine, then they should first off say to them, no, that's not what the state said, but if they will either call the county or call the state with the location, then we'll eventually get that to the state, and Chief Nimkid has said that they will put out a blast to all of these smaller pharmacies and smaller operations that got some limited vaccine, like a couple of ones that I read that got 100.
Yes, sir.
And remind them that that was a part of their deal. If they were going to get it, they were going to get the second, and they had to deal with those patients.
You're absolutely right, and that's a very common question we're fielding every day, multiple times. So thank you for the opportunity to present this information. So your original provider of the first dose will be the provider of your second dose. That is the best option. This is not a normal vaccination process where you can go anywhere to complete your series, because we're against a very limited supply. So if we do 5,000 people, we're being given 5,000 second doses to immunize those 5,000 people. So there's not enough supply available for us to be able to accommodate a lot of other people who went somewhere else, couldn't find a vaccine or missed their appointment, and then come to us. And that is happening with every provider. So the best advice I will give anybody is that go back to your original first dose provider. In other vaccines, that is not the concern because they're routine supply, they're widely available. This is the case because we have limited supply and too high of a demand. So that makes perfect sense to go to their original pharmacy or go to the original doctor's office or public health department where they receive their first dose. And every provider has a different call-out system. Some of the ones like pharmacies or doctor's offices have systems where they can give you an appointment for 4 weeks or 3 weeks whenever your vaccine is due. Some like us, we're doing it at a mass scale. And technically we can give you an appointment. It's on the CDC card, like when is it due? But we've had new locations open up, so that changes where we send people. We've had more or less doses show up. We've had to trade doses with other partners because we're doing it at a mass scale. So our advice is that we will call you 1 to 2 days ahead of time when your dose is due, because several of you have experienced when the first dose happened, we sent you to Arlington or Watauga. Those clinics are currently closed, and now we're sending people to Resource Connection or Northeast Tarrant County site or elsewhere. So a lot of moving parts when you're doing it at a mass scale. So we're not a typical pharmacy fixed location provider that says, okay, come back here, here's your second dose. We're doing thousands by the day. So some of that information is going to change. So that's why our process is 1 to 2 days ahead of time. The other thing that we run into, we try to get the last day. And the reason is when we send 2 days ahead of time, invariably people show up the next day thinking it's the next day because they didn't hear the message correctly or didn't read it correctly. We have feedback on Facebook. Well, I thought my dose was due tomorrow, so I showed up. And then they told me it was the next day. Now I have to go back, take time off of work, and go again. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to balance. All we ask with the public is just be patient with us because this is quite the task. This is not something that's just easy. Okay, what's so hard about giving a vaccine? We do this every day, but it's mass logistics. That's what's taking a little bit of planning effort and maintaining everything.
But so, Vinny, just to be clear, if I go for first dose, I'm still going to get that CDC card that has the date, and that's essentially a goal date. But what you're saying is that folks need to understand that they will receive a notification from the public health department a day or two before letting them know when their actual scheduled date, time, and location is.
Yes,
right?
if you received it from us, yes, then it's 1 to 2 days. If you received from a private doctor's office or a pharmacy, they will do what their system typically allows them to do. most of them are giving you appointments when you leave the office, saying your next appointment's due on this date. Now, there is that wrinkle about do they have that second dose vaccine at that time? If that happens, typically the first guidance was that you have 4 days plus or minus to receive your dose. But now that we're up against it, CDC has come out with guidance that you have up to 6 weeks after you've missed your appointment date. But my best advice, do not miss your appointment date. Because as you know, the volume is just going to grow and it's going to be hard. People are going to get missed. So keep your appointment date as close to the date as possible. Day off would be the ideal. Now, there are things that happen. It happens to be on a Sunday. Clinics are closed. That's fine. We'll give an appointment for Monday or Tuesday, whatever the earliest possible is. Okay. So these are just the maps. On the left-hand side, it shows coverage by zip code of at least having received one dose. And the map looks gray, but it's actually less than 5% in that area. So there are everywhere that people are getting doses. Some zip codes got more coverage. It's not because we like these zip codes for any reason. It's just how the chips fell. Variety of things, how people signed up, where the 1A folks lived, where 1B folks live. So it's kind of sort of automatic. And we're making progress towards making it more methodical. Currently, the original plan was first in, first out, as you all understand. And the only formula that was applied was whether you're 1A or 1B. So you're seeing some of that, impacts of that, and as we learn, we're refining it. On the right-hand side, it shows cities, but that's a little, also, it takes a little bit to kind of understand what you're looking at. It's showing that the cities in Northeast have gotten more percentage. But I think I've shown you different maps or charts last time. Almost half of the doses, 45% or so, are going to Fort Worth. But when you look at percentages, you know, Fort Worth's a big, big city, so it's kind of a drop in the bucket, even though we're sending 45% of the doses to Fort Worth. So it's not showing up as, you know, that it's gotten more. So there's always different ways to look at the information, and I just want people to understand that this is not the only thing that's happening. There is a concerted effort to try to get to more appropriate spots. Here's some of the data about race, ethnicity, and age group. As you can see, a variety of age groups are receiving it, but we were worried about how many 65 and older are getting it. So 38% now that we have the entire county's data. So that's a pretty reasonable number. We hope to try to finish as much of the over 65 group we can with the vaccination, because that's where most of the hospitalizations were happening. But it's going to be a work in progress.
What's our estimated number of 65 plus in the county?
I have 1B, which includes underlying conditions. That was about 500,000. I think 65 and older were 160, 170,000, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I'd have to go look up my numbers. I know, the numbers don't always come right in my head. Yes, I will have to go look it up. Residents vaccinated by race. As you can see, now that the entire county's data is available, the issue we're up against is a lot of unknowns. So that's, again, a reminder that if you end up talking to hospital providers, private providers, pharmacies, anybody, remind them to capture this information, because otherwise we can't make informed decisions if there's unknowns. But rest of the data that we know, Asian Pacific Islander groups got 4% of the vaccine. African Americans have a little bit over 5%. Caucasians have over 45%, and other races have 9%. And from an ethnicity standpoint, we've made a little bit of progress, but 6% have received as Hispanic or Latino, and 34% not Hispanic or Latino. The rest is unknown. Almost 60% is unknown. So that's a big, big number that we don't know what it holds. Similarly, by gender, it's about half and half, but females, 49% we know. Males, only 32% that we know. Rest is unknown, but I'm assuming it's half and half, because it's probably not reported. Here's a little bit on the signups. So that picture looks quite a bit different. Of course, 404,000 was the number that the dashboard was showing, but we know that we're over close to 420,000, I think. 72% are Tarrant County residents. So out-of-county signups are increasing. So that's a task that we're going to work with. But as you can see, where the coverage is, all the blue zones, all the gray is still people signing up, but there's just not enough from there, less than 5%, or less than 500. And total out of this group, 336,000, almost 83% are eligible to receive the vaccine today. And we've got the breakdowns of how many are Group A or Group 1B. So those information will be available. There's another tab I didn't show the chart here. It's just the current vaccine locations where they are, because people have been asking. So final few slides. Last week we presented a plan about zip code prioritization. And I know that it was a step up from the first in, first out approach, trying to get somewhere more equitable. But every plan has its own challenges, right? So it fell in line with what DSHS was asking us to do. Look at your hardest hit areas, at least start there, till you develop a bigger plan. So that was our short game. It was approved by the DSHS because we had some questions about whether it's appropriate. We sent an email, got an answer back. It is approved. But we're making progress. You heard Dr. Trent Adams last week talk about a more equitable approach. There's several different ways to look at it. Some of y'all saw a presentation from our partners at UTA yesterday. So all in all, we found a framework for equitable allocation of the vaccine for COVID, and that comes from the National Academy of Medicine. There is a reference to that in the White House National Strategy. They're talking about working off of a CDC-developed index that's been already there called Social Vulnerability Index. And what is SVI? So it refers to the potential negative impact on communities caused by external stresses on human health. So it could be natural disasters, it could be man-made disasters or disease outbreaks. And reducing the social vulnerability can, decrease both human suffering and economic loss, but we're already here. We're in the middle of a disaster. So we're looking to use that information. There are 15 different variables that go into it, but all the things that we talk about. So instead of taking one thing at a time, I'm going to worry about people who have language barriers or transportation barriers or socioeconomic impact. This takes all of the social determinants and puts it on a sort of a scale, like a score, if you will. So it's an amalgamation of all the factors so you don't miss anything. And CDC has been doing that for a while. Information's available, and as you can see, there's different categories. There's housing and transportation issues, minority status and language issues, household composition, disability, socioeconomic status, and further broken down. So we're going to be using all of this. They also have a map, and I have a more clearer map, but just to kind of show you, the darker blue zones here have the highest vulnerability in our county based on those factors. And this is just a little bit more clearer. All the clutter of the highways is gone. But you can identify really 3 or 4 major areas that have high concentration of social vulnerability. And as we make progress to a more equitable plan, we will be using this data to, do a variety of things.
Let's get to the use of that more equitable plan very quickly, because this graphic that you just put on the screen indicates to a very high degree that where we concentrated our resources last week is not where the most vulnerable areas are.
Yes, almost half of those were not under this social vulnerability. Half were, half weren't. So
well, I would
you're
also tell you,
right.
I got more complaints about even discussing doing anything other than first in, first out. Now, the problem with that is it goes back to the registration and the fact that we had a lot of challenges, and we know we have areas where they're challenged to register. So we do need to figure out how to get them and to assist them in that registration process. But, I'll tell you, after all the calls we got last week, I was ready to scrap any system whatsoever. That
we got the same, I know, and it's a concept that's why I'm kind of taking this slow, not just saying this is what we're doing. I want to be able to use this opportunity to have a dialogue with you all. That way we can educate the public on how to best utilize this. And it has a lot of these things. I know the maps are a little small, but if somebody says, well, I'm socioeconomically disadvantaged, what do you know about me and my living conditions? Yes, we have information, and we know how to address some of these barriers. Now, we can't fix everything in a day, but from a vaccine allocation, we can take these factors and identify areas where we certainly need to do something different.
And Vinny, again, I know I sound like a broken record and will continue to, but part of UNT's responsibility should figure out a way to set up sites within
various areas that are movable and can move around, that's the same as movable, but can go among these folks and help them. And I'll admit there that drive is not going to be the issue, because many times they don't have a car to drive.
Yes.
So we're going to have to figure out on that, those mobile sites, as to where's going to be a good drive-through and where's going to be, something, an alternative to a drive-through that still allows folks to be able to come and to be there. And it may very well be folks who haven't registered. I know JPS is doing it through their clinics. They're vaccinating the homeless at True Worth. So they are reaching out in ways other than registration.
So Judge, you're speaking public health real well, because all of these are the applications. And just to let you know, we have been speaking to Dr. Trent Adams via email. She's looked at this. She's in agreement that this
She understands
Everything
fully.
that you all said, they've already developed
yes.
Plans as it relates to that.
Yes.
Even
So
going
we'll handle
even
weekly
even
basis.
going house to house.
So again, multiple
Sign me up.
applications. Multiple applications of the info, not just where to put the vaccine resources, right? But what kind of modalities would work better in an area, right? If we have a large site somewhere, but people can't come there because they have transportation issues, well, then that doesn't work right. If we get a drive-through location set up and it's too far for people to reach, that doesn't help. So all of that goes into evaluating. So where to put the mobile clinics, where to prioritize vaccine efforts, where to focus outreach efforts, and what kind, right? So some places people are tech savvy enough, they have the computer literacy and the electronics available to sign. Some places they don't have it. Maybe we go door to door, not just public health, but our partners in the community sign up on iPad. Some places may be better suited to call them to community centers. So there's a lot of different things where our language resource is needed. I knock on a door and I don't speak the language and I've got an iPad. That doesn't help, right? So a lot of this culturally appropriate messaging, so variety of applications of this information, more to come as we continue to develop our plans with UNT. And we'll present some information to you next week also, like how are we going to start utilizing as they develop the plans, because the need is obviously there. Whatever we have, start prioritizing it now till the more long game, as Dr. Trent Adams said, is being developed. So it's going to be a work in progress, but we will right the ship right now is what I'm saying over the next week or so to start getting some more resources put into these areas. So that's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you
Any
very
of the
much.
second shot?
Yes, sir.
How is, I think I sent you a text that I had gotten contacted, and I'm assuming that's the procedure you're going through now. Is there still any rhyme or reason where you're sending people? If somebody's from Southeast, let's say they, are you sending them to Hearst, or are you sending them to the resource center?
So generally it's been fixed. Can still issues happen? Yes, especially on the second shot, because what happens is the second shot data is coming from our EMR, and we're just now getting all the information back from the EMR into our call-out system, and sometimes it's hard to sort of look at all the information and put it through the right algorithm. So some confusion does happen. Oh, I lived in Hearst, but they sent me to Resource or Bolin. That has happened. Yeah. But generally, we're trying to send people closer to their location, but there are so many different things that are having to happen. We've had people that were due their dose and Hearst was closed. So we're like, okay, let's send them to Resource because that's open. So those type of consideration, and the public doesn't always understand why am I being sent on this day to this location, but last time I went here, because there's a lot of operational discussion and decisions that we make saying, okay, don't lose the opportunity. The day is here. Let's get them vaccinated. Yes, is it inconvenient? Yes. But at least we gave them the opportunity to get vaccinated.
Okay.
But generally, we are trying to fix with our algorithm. It's better on the first doses now. Second doses are presenting their own challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 4 or 5, I believe, Audience participation is the first is Nancy Groves. She is in person, so she may be in the back room. So Nancy, if you're back there, please come forward.
I don't have a look forward.
Well, y'all, you're right, because that's not a sheet, that's just a. Once again. I'm not sure if Nancy's still back there or not.
She probably is.
Was there anyone back in the back row?
She's usually sitting out here.
I know. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if she comes back in, she can. I'm going to call Joanne Cardoza. Is she coming?
There's nobody in the back room.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Joanna. This is Judge Whitley. We're at the place
Hello?
on the.
Hello?
Joanna,
Yes, sir.
this is Judge Whitley. We're at the place on the agenda for audience participation. You requested the ability to speak, so you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Joanna Cardoza. I live in Precinct 2. I would like to start off first by thanking Commissioner Devin Allen for approving much-needed repairs to the eastern part of Nathan Lowe in Arlington. I saw Precinct 2 county trucks and construction workers getting ready for street repairs this morning. Definitely that street's falling apart, so I appreciate that. I would like to once again bring attention to the need for information and access to sign up for the vaccine in communities of color and lower income residents. Per the data that was presented at court last week, wealthier non-minority communities are being vaccinated at a higher rate. Although I do appreciate the county flyer that was distributed in multiple languages, that alone is not enough. We need to get into vulnerable communities and communicate the availability of the vaccine and help with registrations. Partner with organizations already in the community to do outreach. Those that are concerned for the vulnerable in our communities need to see more action. The most vulnerable continue to fall behind each day that they do not register to get in line for the vaccine. Many of the essential workers in our community have no health insurance, so we need to make sure we are communicating that the vaccine is free. Instead of replicating efforts or working with organizations that have no clue on how to work in vulnerable communities, this is the time for the county to partner with nonprofits, community leaders, and faith organizations to minimize and reduce barriers to the vaccination. Provide accessible hours for those that do not work a 9-to-5, Monday to Friday job so that they can make it to the vaccination appointment. Everyone wants to get back to a normal life as much as possible, open our economy at 100%, and see our children back at school. But until we reach every corner of communities, we will not be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Next will be Robert Bucher.
Hello?
I'm looking for Robert Bucher.
Yes, hold on 1 second. Please.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Robert Beacon.
Robert, this is Judge Whitley. It's that time on the agenda, so you have 3 minutes.
Okay. In the last month, we've had 55 plus deaths due to the vaccine. Some include doctors and countless reactions that have long-lasting effects. In the history of viruses, we've never had to wear a mask until now. Seems to be when people get in the way, we tend to have more issues. So hospital and upper administrations have been getting kickbacks out of this is what we're finding out through more and more research. I'd rather take a 99% percentage of survival rate over a 95% chance, which is a lot better. And I'd rather take naturalized vitamins. Why can't we do that for our immune system? I mean, that's a legit question. Why do we have to have an immune booster from a vaccine that's not trustworthy? I mean, you know, Abbott is not a great example to even be following. So, I mean, like, why? He just recently was in a bar with the mask off talking about beer to go. One of the many things you've been fighting. So, I mean, we've been flying by the seat of our pants according to Vaccination. I mean, he said that out of his mouth. Are we flying by the seat of our pants? Do we know the vaccine's going to work? Can we take the mask off and take the vaccine? No, we can't. It's all about control. It's about time that we stop. Week after week, I come with not hired guns, but smoking guns. The only smoking gun is Vaccination lies. It's time to stop. It's time to stop with the lies, time to stop with the mask, time to stop with the bullcrap. And the fact that he even quoted Dr. Fauci, who went back on his words and gaslighted everybody and even admitted it on YouTube, is insane. So it's about time we stop with the madness. I mean, it's a done deal anymore. It's just a done deal. Y'all got to stop this at some point in time. The vaccine's not the answer. If we boost our immune system, they got Centric, they got Silvers out there, they got vitamin C, B, D. I mean, they got all kinds cheaper.
1 minute.
I mean, this is crazy. I mean, if y'all want socialism for your grandkids, let me know. Science has failed us. Old science was pure. New science is compromised. And that's just the way it is. Y'all going to have to start doing your own research and quit listening to him. It's crazy that y'all even follow this guy. It's time to stop. It's time to stop because our kids depend on this. I mean, if y'all are really about the kids, show us. If y'all are really about Tarrant County, show us. Because y'all showed us everything but. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bucher. Have a good day. Next is Sherrod Perry.
Hello?
Mr. Perry, this is Judge Whitley. It's that time on the agenda. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I actually had a question or two before I get going here. It's really for all 5 of you, all 5 commissioners, and also...
Well, you're getting going with your 3 minutes right now, so you can ask the question.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, how many of you have taken either vaccine, Moderna or Pfizer, at this point?
I believe 4 of the 5 of us have. If I'm wrong.
Okay. And has Tanasia taken it? Has Vinny taken it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, all right, and you feel fine?
Feel great.
Okay. Because I've been following a lot of news articles and a lot of videos going around social media. I'm seeing people going into convulsions. I am seeing people, having serious, severe reactions to this vaccine. And one name that sort of stuck out, like a famous name, was Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron, he got the shot early January, and then basically 2 weeks later, he died. Baseball home run king, I think y'all know who I'm talking about. And of course, if you read the article, they'll say, every article says, well, you can't say for sure it's the vaccine. You can't say for sure it's the vaccine. They died, but this person died, that person died, this doctor died, this nurse died. But you can't say for sure it's the vaccine. Okay. So here's my thing. My very first speech here, back in July, I said that this virus has a 99.74% survival rate. I was wrong about that. I've been right about much of what I've told you, but that's one thing I wanted to correct. It is not 99.74 survival rate. It's actually 100% survival rate because there is no virus, and I've been saying that for a few weeks now. And I've even shown you where I'm getting my information from. There's at least three books that I can refer you to to understand that the whole notion of a virus is a fraud. HIV and AIDS is a fraud. Okay, HIV does not cause AIDS, but here we are. All this public health money goes towards AIDS and HIV to this very day.
One minute.
Gotcha. So it's a cycle this is a fraud that's been put on the public over and over again. There's a virus going around. Everyone's gonna, get sick. Swine flu from the 70s. I mean, I could go on and on. But again, I've told you about a couple of the books that I get my information from. Again, The Contagion Myth, Virus Mania, and then another book that I haven't got through, but it's really thick. It's called What Really Makes You Ill. Okay, and it says why everything you thought you knew about disease is wrong. So again, we are being led down a path to our own destruction. This is a depopulation agenda. Most people are pretending like they don't see it's happening. Most people are in denial, and it makes them uncomfortable to hear that, but they're going along with it. And, like I said, it should be obvious, but again, at this point, I think most people are too afraid.
Is Nancy Groves. I'll call one more time, but I haven't seen her come back in, so she had filled out a sheet, but she appears to have left. With that, we are... Okay, I just thought maybe you had something over there that you weren't giving me yet.
Oh, no.
With that, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Number one.
Yes. In fact, we're going to change a little bit of what we have done in the past. We have a new presenter, and we're going to be talking about the 4 pillars, and Ms. South is here to address the court at this time.
So let me just ask one question. I don't know how long you've got, but we got 3 people out there, at least 2 of them probably charging by the hour.
About 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes at the most. We can take item number 2 if you want to first.
Let's take item number 2. Y'all come on forward.
Get them out of our pocket.
I don't think they're in our pocket. My guess is Cooks is paying for them.
Yes, good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. We have today a request for court approval of the issuance of 2021 hospital revenue bonds in one or more series by the Tarrant County Cultural Education Facilities Finance Corporation for Cook Children's Medical Center in an amount not to exceed $100 million. The proceeds of these bonds will be used to refund all or a portion of 2010A Tarrant County Cultural Education Finance Facilities.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Anyway. Bonds and to have improvements to Cook Children's Medical Centers. The letter is provided.
Some actual construction.
I think they're just doing some minor improvements. There's not any construction, but they are refunding the bonds that actually were for construction. So the hub letter has been included, and we're just asking for your approval of the sale of these bonds.
Move approval.
Second. A motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Sorry that we didn't catch it earlier. I'd have brought you.
Ms. South.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Megan.
Okay, I'll be very brief. So as you all know, it's been a couple of weeks since Guidehouse gave their last presentation. for their final presentation. And so this will be an effort to continue that high-level overview of, what's been stated and what's going on. So it will look a little bit similar to what Guidehouse had presented, but it will encompass the pillars still, any newly emerging issues that come up, and then the grant and the county spend update will be on there. So this is our high-level overview that you have all seen before. So you'll notice that on the first pillar, there is a name change. And since this was initially created, there's been an expansion of items that need to be added underneath this pillar. So we felt like this encompassed more of the activity. So the flu vaccinations are now falling under this pillar, along with the vaccination centers, and it still will encompass the testing sites. So that will also be left on there. As far as the testing sites are concerned, on January 4th, the county has since pushed everything over to Tatum for the permanent sites. So there's been no other changes with any of the other three pillars since the last update. So we'll move forward. The next couple of slides are going to focus on new information that's evolving, changing. So that's what we'll continue to put in for the next couple. So this one's regarding the vaccination centers. This will echo a lot of what Vinny has already stated. We did add the mega vaccination center in Northeast Tarrant County at the Hearst Conference Center. That site was made possible with the support of the 14 Northeast Tarrant County cities and the Northeast Fire Department Agency. And then as far as the numbers on here are concerned, it's just a snapshot in time, so you will see a little bit of a differentiation between Vinny and the numbers that I have on this presentation. But at the time that we put this out, there were 104,551 vaccine doses, and Public Health had administered 39,839 of those doses. Also, JPS, the number on this slide is 19,682, but I was informed this morning that they have now reached over the 20,000 dose mark. Next is the Reynolds Census Program. I'm not going to read all of the statistics up there, but you all can see those. Kristen is going to give more of an in-depth update after I sit down. So unless you have any questions right now, we'll wait on her. The next is the county grant update. We have modified this slide a little bit after working with the county auditor's office so that it looks just slightly different. But just to note, the total of all the COVID-related grant funds is $49,660,163. And then if there's any questions, Renee or her team can answer anything on the slide. We did add the FEMA. You will see the FEMA lines have been added to this, along with the emergency rental assistance line on the bottom. The last 4 columns up there are new to the spreadsheet. Any questions on this one? No? And then the last slide is just the county spend update. It does look slightly different than before, but the year-to-date spending is approximately $157,634,237, and the remaining funds are projected at $52,323,472.
So this is the same thing when Guidehouse presented it. It was in the pie charts.
Yes, ma'am. So there was another slide right after that.
Okay.
And that's it. I told you it would be short and sweet. Any questions?
Good job.
Thank you. I will continue to keep it short and sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to have just a brief update on the rental assistance program. Ms. Camareno is here to address the court.
Well, and Kristen, as you make your way, I saw on the slide that Megan presented that all of the initial reviews of the applications were done.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that's a big deal.
It is, and we're still working through getting all the payments out,
Sure.
but every application has been reviewed. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Kristen,
Yes. Yes,
I know,
sir.
and I don't mean to interrupt you, what you're gonna do, but when we get finished, would you visit with me for a moment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. As Megan said, each week she'll give sort of an overview of the rental assistance data to date on the CRF program. At some point, we will transition into our new program that we are working as quickly as possible to prepare for. It is my hope that we can launch that 1st of March. We have a lot of plates spinning at the same time, working with multiple departments to get that going, and I will provide more information as the details are finalized. Today, however, I want to update you on one facet of our rental assistance and eviction diversion efforts, and that is a program that was initiated out of the state of Texas and the governor's office specifically. That is a coordinated effort between our JP courts and administrative staff. So that is the Texas Eviction Diversion Program and the Texas Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And I have been coordinating with Judge Brandt on this, and he's working with the remaining judges. Program overview. So we received $1.15 million specifically for this program. I'll call it TRAP. That's how I'll refer to it. And part of receiving those funds requires us to participate in the TEDP, which is the diversion component. Again, we're coordinating the county's new department, Alternate Dispute Resolution, and the new director, Janet Denton, is working with me on this effort. It is our hope that that department will take this over in the coming months. So you'll likely hear from Janet about this in the future. This program will provide up to 6 months of rent to landlords for evictions filed for non-payment. So as you think about this, it's important to understand this is really the last step in our efforts to prevent evictions. So before getting to this point, it's our hope that all of our other programs and outreach for those programs will prevent evictions from being filed. This specific program is what we can offer once an eviction has been filed. Once an agreement is reached, assuming it is between landlord-tenant with the help of Ms. Denton and her staff, then the court will abate for 60 days and then dismiss should no other request be filed by the landlord. Program guidelines. So a household must have been economically impacted by COVID-19. There is a self-attestation that the judges can accept for that. It requires proof of tenancy, i.e. a lease agreement. No duplication of benefits or assistance, so they can't have received assistance for the same months. You've heard this all along. It's the same deal. Gross household income at or below 80% area median income, and I've included the chart there for you for our region so that you can see what that income level is. And lastly, here is a process map for this program to give you an overview of what it will look like in action and how the four parties will interface throughout the process. So the plaintiff, being the landlord, will file an eviction. They will be given an opportunity to fill out a form while they're filling out their paperwork that expresses interest in participating in the program. There's an overview of the benefits, and then they can then and there fill it out. If they do send it in then or fill it out then that paperwork will go immediately to ADR, to Alternate Dispute Resolution, so that they can begin the mediation, if you will, process.
So they file their eviction in the JP court. They simultaneously fill out an application for participation in this program. Do the JP courts know what to do with that application?
Yes, so we're working through all those details now with Ms. Denton and each of the courts. We have already created some standard forms that they can use or tailor as they'd like. We're setting up phones and email and things like that so that they'll know exactly where to send everything. So yes, we're working through that now.
Good.
So there are two opportunities, I'll just summarize, for the landlord to engage in this process. One is when they file the eviction paperwork. The second one is if let's say they decide not to at that time, they're hurried, they don't read it, they don't want to participate for whatever reason. Again, at trial, at the hearing, at the top of the docket, the judge will read a statement about the program and ask if anyone there is interested in participating. At that time, they will be given another opportunity to fill out that form saying they're interested.
And if they elect to fill out that form, then the eviction process terminates?
It abates
Or
or
suspends.
suspends, yes, and then we'll reconvene later. So, so we hope that this will be an effective tool, again, for that sort of last opportunity to prevent eviction, and further hope that we see fewer being filed in the first place through some of our other efforts. So if you have any questions about this program or anything, any of the other rental assistance programs we're working on now, please.
So
This
then,
pays 2 months?
I'm sorry?
Is it my understanding this pays 2 months?
Up to 6 months.
Up to 6 months?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the landlord has to agree?
Yes, sir. And payment goes directly to the landlord.
so obviously we're still in the planning and implementation phase, but when does it go live for all intents and purposes?
So as far as the Texas Eviction Diversion Program for Tarrant County, that begins Monday, February 1st. The TRAP, the funding portion of it, so landlords will begin to fill out the paperwork. We haven't yet received the 1.15 million. We expect that soon, any day really. Once we receive that, we can begin pushing out those funds.
Very good. This is great. I know that we have been trying to get more information on these state programs for some time, so that's great progress.
Any questions about anything else, rental assistance or eviction prevention related?
Just more broadly, as we talk about the CRF program and this, and then the emergency rental assistance through the omnibus relief bill, and then whatever comes next. I kind of want to see all of that put together so I can understand how it all fits.
Absolutely.
So
yes, I'm working on that.
Point.
And I plan to have that for you next week, actually,
Okay.
a chart of all of the different programs and eligibility, and making sure that we're not missing any specific groups of people in those programs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sure, thank you.
Is that it, Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Glenn?
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Glenn, I think you have another announcement.
Thank you. Yes, I do. I wanted to take just a minute to introduce the newest, one of the newest members of the HR department to the court and to everybody present. Myra Caldera, and if you'll stand, Myra, has been with us the second time around. I think it's a week now. So Myra is the office manager in HR, and so she replaced Ms. Valdez, who retired. So some of you may have worked with Myra. Myra worked for us a couple years back. She was working with us on our return to work program for those employees who are injured on the job, and so she did a fantastic job for us. And so when this vacancy came up, she applied, and so she's been hired. I know she'll do a great job for us. While Myra was away, she actually finished her undergraduate work. And so she's a recent graduate of Tarleton State University. She is. It's a huge accomplishment. I believe she's applied to work on her master's degree. So Myra will be the primary contact for all of you and your staff when we have shared sick leave requests. So she's the primary point of contact. And just as a special note, Myra has a sister-in-law, same first and last name, Myra Caldera. So if you're reaching out to HR's Myra, just make sure in SAP, in Outlook, that you make sure that you're reaching out to the appropriate one. And I believe in Outlook, she actually is Myra Caldera HR. So there are two of them. But we're
Both with the county?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, sir. I believe her sister-in-law works in the court. Okay. So anyway, we're lucky enough to have one of the Myras in HR, so we're excited.
I predict that there will be issues.
Yeah, just a few.
There's still issues with TWs.
Members of the court, if we can go to public health, item F1, we're requesting that the court approve the submission of a grant application to DSHS for support of the Public Health Department emergency response efforts to COVID-19. That amount should be about $262,282.
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Melissa?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Melissa.
Hello.
Sorry.
Was that you ringing?
Yeah, that's me. Somebody's texting me. Yeah, very busy. We have 4 items for your considerations this afternoon. The first item is an award recommendation for RFP number 2020-198, the purchase of contract management software for the Criminal District Attorney's Office and Information Technology, awarding to Centelex.
It's easy for you to say.
Centelex. In the amount of, I had that earlier, and I just lost it just that quick, in the amount of $69,949. If approved, we're also requesting contract approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is also an award recommendation for bid number 2021-011. This is Green Bay Jail Security Fencing Upgrades for Facilities Management, awarding to CDB General Contractors in the amount of $154,400. If approved, we're also requesting contract approval and acceptance of the payment and performance bond.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The third item is an award recommendation regarding bid number 2021-032. This is an annual contract for cab and chassis trucks with chipper body, awarding to Rush Truck Centers of Fort Worth per unit price.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the fourth and last item is an award recommendation for bid number 2021-047, annual contract for cab and chassis trucks with liquid asphalt hydrostatic distributors, awarding to Rush Truck Centers of Fort Worth per unit price.
Move for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioner Allen and Commissioner Fickus, I believe y'all have interlocal agreements.
Yes. Move approval of items 7K1, A, and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Yes, and I would request approval for items 7K2, A and B, interlocal with the City of Southwest.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have an appointment today.
I do. Would like to reappoint Rebecca Barksdale as our representative to the City of North Richland Hills Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 2.
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We have no insurance bonds today, so we have before you the approval of the claims in the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addended addendum.
Addended addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I believe that takes care of our briefing items. So with that, we will recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items exempted under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. I hope so. Megan? Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.